Hey everyone, welcome back. I am Philip Rothman with Scoring Notes, and we are at the NAMM 2024 show once again here in Anaheim, California. And I'm going to be doing a series of interviews with all the people that represent the products that you like to use. And starting off today, we have Sam Butler from Avid, representing Sibelius, Pro Tools, and all the rest of it. Sam, it's great to see you once again here at NAMM. How's it going?
Really good, thank you. The sun is shining. It's 26 degrees. I don't know what that is in the other one.
About 65, 70,
and
something
it's
like
great.
that.
It's beautiful weather, and one of the reasons why we come to NAMM in January.
I'm sure.
Get some sunshine.
Yeah.
So yeah, great to see you again, Philip.
Great to see you, Sam. Well, look, I know that you have a lot of new things that you want to talk about, some previews to new features in Sibelius and some other things that are going on. But since we are at NAMM, and it's the first time that at least I've been at NAMM in 4 years. Is it the same for you, the first return?
Yeah, it was the January of 2020. We were showing, I can't remember what we were showing then, all new templates and all sorts of things in Sibelius. But since then, we've been just non-stop. We all, of course, work from home from then. Right. And we've been growing the team, and some people didn't even go to the office for a couple of years, but we're now all back.
Yeah.
I work from home in the UK, but the main core of the development team are in Montreal, and they're all back in the office.
Yeah.
And
you should get them all to come to NAMM out of the snow and ice in Montreal.
Would be fun. Yeah, they are. Yeah, it's much colder than anyone would really want to.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're having lots of fun, and we're still doing our regular releases every few months. And so excited to show some new previews.
Excellent.
Today.
Well, listen, we will get to all those new features in a moment because they are really exciting. But the first thing I want to talk to you about is actually NAMM itself, since we're here. And, in many ways, I feel like NAMM is the ideal place to showcase Sibelius to all of its constituencies. You've got lots of people that compose and perform music here, especially in notated form. You have the publishers, among those Hal Leonard, Alfred, whom we cover on Scoring Notes, as you know. And those publishers both use Sibelius to create the music, and to some degree, they also use Sibelius cloud publishing to view the scores and to sell them online. So there's a lot of things going on at NAMM. And then, of course, you have the massive audio presence. And thankfully, this year, we're away from all that massive audio presence, unlike 4 years ago when we were in the thick of it, so we can hear ourselves think, which is great. But you've got that as well. So who are you specifically talking to here, and what are you hearing from them about how they're using Sibelius and what they'd like to see?
It covers all of those people that you mentioned, and it's really the way we've structured Sibelius with the free entry mobile apps and desktop app. Anybody can get it for free. So we've got people that just need to get a little idea down on their phone or on their even on their PC, and so they just want to sort of get going and kind of make sure that it's compatible with their new Mac or whatever. And then all the way up through to professional composers who are handing off scores to orchestrators who then use Sibelius to create the parts and then print them out for performance or recording. And those users are really interested in the little tiny details of, have you fixed this bug? Have you changed the behavior of this? And they really would like the reassurance that nothing is changing, because nothing can change in their workflow. They don't have time to relearn anything. So some of them use quick keys and other automation systems that rely on, they automate the movement of the mouse to close a window, to click OK, to put the cursor in the right place, wait for someone to type something. So if we move any of the UI, then that breaks all those workflows. So we need to be very conscious of their workflow. So it's really good to see people and learn about their use cases here. And as you say, the publishers, we're showing off the new viewers and new API for cloud publishing at the show as well. So on those publishers, it's key for them to create and engrave the music in Sibelius and know that what they display in a web browser is exactly the same as what they see in Sibelius. So they can sign it off and everybody's happy, the publisher, the rights holders, and so on. And then when it's sold online, it's exactly the same. And it's what they print out in a book as well. So it's the same workflow. So we're really catering everybody who is a complete beginner and just wants to write a few things all the way up through to publishing and through the other side as well.
Yeah, and it's really true. You do see that range of attendees here at the NAMM show. You do see beginners, amateurs, or hobbyists who are here, or maybe it's not fair to call them that because maybe their main profession is in something maybe not core of what Sibelius does, but they do use it, and they do need to be secure in the fact that they, the things that they are accustomed to using, continue to use. All those different moving parts continue to work together as a whole, which is challenging, and I think you do a very good job of keeping that user experience consistent from iteration to iteration, and then you have, like you said, the professional orchestrators, arrangers. We met some of them last night who are using Sibelius all day, every day, and getting into those deep features. And speaking of those features, I suppose it's no coincidence, or maybe it is, but probably not, that some of those features that you're previewing here at NAMM directly align with what those NAMM attendees might be most interested in. You just mentioned a few of those, but one of them that was teased on your website and we've been seeing at the booth, at the Avid booth, is the copying and pasting of MIDI directly between Sibelius and Pro Tools.
Yeah, that's a really fun feature.
Yeah.
So this was born from the film workflows that Simon Fanglen's been helping us to define.
Right.
Where he'll before this feature came along, he'll be writing the music once in Pro Tools, then he'll switch to Sibelius and have to press record again and write it again. And the problem with that is that there might be some slight variance, they might make a little mistake, it's not guaranteed to be exactly the same. Plus, it takes twice as long. So you write a cue for a minute or something, then you've got to write it again for another minute. And there's padding around there to sort out formatting and seeing what you're doing. So instead what we're doing now is you can record it once in Pro Tools, you can select that MIDI region, MIDI clip, and you can just use standard copy and paste. So Control-C, Command-C to copy it, move to Sibelius and just paste. And that will, it'll just stream the MIDI in from that point in your score. And it's as good as MIDI input. So if you've used FlexiTime, or in fact just opened a MIDI file, there's a bit of cleanup to do. There is the Renotate Performance plugin, which genuinely does a really good job at just cleaning stuff up. And I think for version 1, we'll see, we'll start to learn all the workflows and see what people do after pasting the MIDI to see if we can actually automate some of that. Right. To remove key switches or tidy up. Maybe we just run the plugin to Renotate Performance all the time, because that at least gets you to a much cleaner state. It does half the work for you, so at least you don't need to copy that around and sort of fix it up. So we'll see what those are. But so that's one of the main workflows. Another one is, so if you're in Pro Tools and you've recorded your drums, guitar, and vocals or whatever, and you need to write a string part, you could sit there in Pro Tools and do it, or you can do it in Sibelius. So you can now select the whole song or the session in Pro Tools, copy, go to Sibelius, and the idea I think is going to be that if you use a system selection first, then paste, it'll bring across the conductor track. So that's the time signatures, key signatures, and tempo mapping. And then today's build, you get all the notes as well, but you can easily just delete the notes and keep the structure. But the idea is then you've just got your string quartet, blank score, but it's got the complete song structure. Then you can just go to town and start writing. As Rewire is still working for now, then you can sync the two applications. So then when you write your string arrangement, it'll sync to the song that you're writing. So there's that workflow. Another workflow is that you may be in Sibelius and you would like to add some MIDI automation. And people have been asking for a MIDI editor in Sibelius for years, and we've got one in Pro Tools. So we could reinvent the wheel and build one in Sibelius, or you can now just copy the music from Sibelius, put it into Pro Tools, do your thing, add all your MIDI automation, and then copy and paste it back. Yeah, so we're looking at tightening that up and see where we can go for that. But those are the three sort of main workflows that we've thought of, and of course we build something and people use it for some completely different reason. So we'll look forward to that.
Yeah, and I imagine that feedback from the users, once it's out there, will inform how you continue to develop that feature and see the best ways to make it more useful. It strikes me that this is something that we expect for other applications and have had for a long time, whether it's copying and pasting between the text from a web browser, or even text and images between a web browser and Microsoft Word, or a text file, or your favorite graphic program, or something of that nature. And of course, you're limited to a certain extent to what the program or programs can do and how they can format, how they can strip out data that is meaningless to the program. And I imagine the same is true with MIDI. And of course, MIDI is certainly not perfect for our music notation. It omits a lot of data, doesn't contain a lot of data that we would typically require for music notation. But I think the really exciting thing here is that, having done this myself many, many times, when you go from a DAW, or you go from Pro Tools to Sibelius, or really any other application, it's really, as you said, it's really cumbersome, because you've got to create all the MIDI data, you've got to export the whole thing typically as a MIDI file, or you have to select, in the software which things you want to export. Think about all that before you do the export, and then in the same process, maybe the application like Sibelius doesn't have an option for you to just selectively import. It's all or nothing, from the MIDI file. Then you can clean it up there. And now what we're talking about is something basically as simple as, hey, I work in 8-bar sections, and I want to write that in Sibelius. I want to copy that into Pro Tools, do my automations, then copy it back into Sibelius, and continue going from there. Or whatever the workflow is. Like you said, the users will inform more, and you'll see how that works. But the whole step of creating extraneous MIDI files and all of that goes away with this feature, and I think it's a really important workflow, and probably one that we would like to see in other software. And so my question to you there is this going to be limited just to Sibelius and Pro Tools, or is this something that if another application, audio or notation application, supports MIDI copy and paste into the clipboard, that Sibelius and Pro Tools will support that as well?
Yeah, it's we've done it intentionally to be open.
Mm-hmm.
So
great.
Any application that would like to support the workflow can do. We've tried a few applications and we can't necessarily get them to work very well, but only because we've chosen a specific way of implementing the copy paste. But it's all on the public clipboard. It's standard MIDI data.
Yep.
There were a few ways of doing it. So you've just got to use the same one as the one that we're using, and then it will work very easily. So yeah, we're of course adding our own as much little sort of workflows that benefit Pro Tools and Sibelius. So for song structure, or MIDI data only, or those sorts of things that we're considering that would benefit Pro Tools and Sibelius. But it really doesn't matter what the intention is. If there's another application that would like to do it as well and support it, then yeah, we're really keen for that.
That's great. Well, I'm sure a lot of people will be excited to hear that. And the next step will be Music XML. If you can copy and paste Music XML, wouldn't that be something? Seriously,
that would be something. Yeah. Pro Tools doesn't support Music XML yet.
Right.
I keep asking for it, but
yeah.
we'll see. Yeah, there are lots of other new formats coming along. There's one called DAW Project as well, which we might use inside Pro Tools.
Right.
So yeah, and that is a container that can contain lots of different things. So,
right. Yeah. And then we have the MNX format that is forthcoming as well. So I mean, it is kind of interesting to think about that potential workflow if you're using multiple applications, notation software applications, and you could copy music and it would copy as XML and then paste it into another application, Sibelius, and so on. So this is really great. It's exciting to see that this is moving forward, and you've previewed it here. And then, another thing that you're previewing is the application for Android and Chromebook. Long time coming. A lot of people have been asking about this. So what led to this development?
So this is really exciting. So it's been a multi-year project to get Sibelius running on all devices that we could mainly conceive of.
Yeah.
And that means iOS and Android. We released our iOS app in July 2021.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and that's had great success. And every version that we release, we always track the downloads, and it's hundreds of thousands. And we're really happy with that progress, and it just keeps going up and up every time. It's really key in education for people to be able to bring their own devices. Ideally, we would have had this before the pandemic, and then everybody would be able to take any device home and carry on. But yeah, so we're really there now, and this the Android app is exactly the same, pretty much exactly the same as the iOS app. It's not going to have a couple features for version 1, but we're going to add those later on. So MIDI input won't work, and or won't be enabled, and the AI chords is going to be iOS and desktop only. Other than that, it's fully featured. It's been quite a journey trying to cajole the Android ecosystem to take our application, but we're really getting there. So it's the same paradigm across the board. So it's a free app. So Sibelius is free on desktop as well as iOS and will be on Android. And then as with iOS, when you hit a feature limitation, it'll then ask you to log in with your Avid account. So if you have a current license of Sibelius, either a subscription or a perpetual license with an active plan, that will give you that'll unlock all the features. So it's for the tier that you have. So if you have Sibelius Artist, it'll unlock the artist tiers, artist feature. And then if you've got Sibelius Ultimate, then it'll unlock all the features. And we're finding that works really well on iOS, and it allows people to take the music on the go. So if you're a heavy desktop user, you can still just take your phone and there are your scores on iCloud or Dropbox or what have you. Yeah, it's got the same review mode as well, so a little padlock on the top right-hand corner. So especially on a phone, if you open quite a large score, you need to lock the score, because you don't really want your big finger starting to drag staves around, and it can get a bit tricky quite quickly. So there's a little padlock, and in fact the padlock comes on automatically if you're on a tier of Sibelius that's say Sibelius First or Artist, and you open a massive score, it'll still open it. So even though it's got more staves than you're allowed to create music for, it'll open the file, and then you can play it back, you can print it, you can basically look around, and that's the same on desktop as well. So if you've got Sibelius First and someone sends you a massive score, you can still open it, and you can still review it on desktop as well. You can still use the annotation and the comments features, and you can save it. You just can't unlock everything and start writing. So the same paradigm is across all platforms now. And we're going out, at the show we've unlocked a closed beta, as it's called, as in you need to sign up for the beta. You can't just find Sibelius on the Google Play Store right now. So there's a form to fill in on the Resource Center article, or if you look for some of our tweets this week. It runs through the sign-up process, and we're getting through that list as much as we can. And then you'll get access to the build, and you can check it out. It's a little bit rough around the edges, which is why it's a beta. And then in the coming weeks, we'll once we're a bit more comfortable with more people trying it out, then we'll release this as an open beta, and that will then appear on the Play Store, and then anybody can come and download it and try it out. And then when we're really happy, we'll release it, hopefully in a month. I don't know, right. Whenever that's sort of going to be ready. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Have you done an open beta like this before for Sibelius?
No.
Okay.
No, this is the first time we've sort of opened this up. So you don't need to sign our non-disclosure agreement as regular desktop beta users would have had to do. But it is beta, so back your phone up,
right,
and don't try and use your production scores without backing those up, etc., etc.
Right.
So yeah, if you've beta tested things, then you'll be fairly used to this sort of thing. And Google handled the beta testing and the feedback form and all of that through the Play Store. So it's kind of hands-off-ish, that we provide a build and up it goes, and people can then go and download it. We don't need to provide a link to the build and release have notes and people follow it and there's a forum and all that. It's really just you'll get the build notification through the Play Store and off you go.
So for people that are interested and want to sign up, they would go to the resource center on Avid.com?
Yeah, so Avid.com, and then there's a link at the top, I think, for Resource Center.
Yeah.
And then all our articles are there, going back years, and thankfully it's towards the top still at the moment. So you'll be able to find it. Or just Google for Sibelius Android coming soon, and it probably comes up towards the top.
That's great. So like I said, I know within minutes, I recall in 2021 of people being aware of the iPad version. One of the first questions was, "What about Android?"
Yeah.
For the uninitiated, can you summarize just very briefly what are the challenges between developing for iOS and Android?
One of them is the sheer number of devices.
Yeah.
So and the individual capabilities of those devices. It isn't just screen resolution and size and dimensions. On my phone, we discovered that you can change the resolution, so therefore all the text and images, etc., just scaled completely differently. So part of doing a closed beta and an open beta, when you fill out the form for the closed beta, we ask you what your device is, just so we can see genuinely what people have got. And if they then submit feedback, we can see what device they're trying it on. And we've got people signing up with, flip phones and all sorts of crazy things that we just don't have. And there's even an e-ink device that runs Android.
Oh, yeah,
so
right.
that's completely black and white.
Yep.
And we've been able to try it out very recently, and it works really well.
That's
can
amazing.
See Sibelius, and
Wow.
it's all e-ink, and it's all a bit sort of crazy.
That's
and
cool.
matrixy.
Yeah.
So that's one challenge. Another challenge is Qt or Qt's support for Android isn't as complete. Certainly, I think maybe at least the version of Qt that we're on, which is 5.15. So we've had to implement a lot of the features natively ourselves, which is a bit of a shame. So when we did iOS, we made sure, where possible, everything was generic. So we just used the default file browser or the default way of calling accessibility or something like that, because we knew that we were going to do Android. So then it came to Android, and we realized that, they don't support in-app purchase. So we had a choice. Do we not support in-app purchase at all and just have a free app where you can log in, or do the work? So we've done the work. So if you don't own Sibelius at all, and you only have an Android device, so you might just have a Chromebook, then you can subscribe to the app in-app, and you only get it on your Android devices. So we've had to implement those sorts of things from scratch, which has just taken an extra couple of months and so on. So it's quite a challenge.
But I imagine the expectation it'll be worth it, and especially because of the tremendous adoption of these devices, the Chromebook, in the education market. Is that really where you're seeing this?
That's a big area, yeah, of course. And like we were saying at the beginning, the range of Sibelius users are from a couple of singers and an organ for church, all the way up through to film scores. And to be able to review a massive score on the go is really fun. It's really valuable. But yeah, for education, it's going to be key. And to allow a school to have a trolley of Chromebooks or iPads or whatever, we don't want the technology to get in the way. Mm-hmm. You just want to write music, and here's Sibelius, go for it.
Right.
So now people have got choice. And last year we released a new type of licensing for education, which was it's available for everybody. It's called team licensing. And you can buy a batch of licenses and hand them out to individuals. So we needed this because if you've got a school and everyone's bringing their own devices in, instead of getting licenses that are on-prem for school, so you might have a lab of 12 computers, but then you've got 50 students flowing into that room. So now those 50 students all have their own devices. The school can now buy 50 licenses. And to help with the budget, we've halved the cost at the same time. So now they're $30 a seat. So then the school can buy their 50 licenses, and in their Avid account, there's a new admin console. where they can add those 50 students and assign licenses to those individually. And then they can run Sibelius on any device. So it just gives them a regular Sibelius license. They get an activation ID, they can boot it up on Windows, Mac, but more importantly, they can then bring up their phone and their Android device, or whatever it is, Chromebook or so on, and they can log into that, and it unlocks the features. So this is a way for education to unlock all the features, to be able to support all their classroom learning, whether it's remote or on-prem. So yeah, it's sort of tying everything together in that sense.
That's great. And these are user-facing features, a lot of these, especially with the education users. And then one of the other things that you're previewing here are some of the updates to Sibelius Cloud Publishing, which is really something that is used by developers and publishers, but the end user is the customer who then views and purchases the score online. So what are we seeing there?
Well, yeah, quite. So, and in fact, just touching on education. So, Sibelius Cloud Publishing, if people don't know, is our way. It's a good collection of bits of technology, mostly running in the cloud, to allow you to view a Sibelius file in your web browser. So, those with Sibelius on desktop can click a link. Click a button, and it gives you a short URL to that score. You can then give that to, your orchestrator to say, "Hey, this is my new tune. What do you think about it?" And just get live feedback, and they can view that on their phone, anything, because it's anything with a modern web browser. Those who remember Scorch from a decade plus ago,
I remember.
will remember seeing sheet music in a browser, and that used a plugin. This doesn't need a plugin. It's all JavaScript and clever HTML and that sort of thing, and that can play the score back and it can transpose. And we've had cloud publishing for a few years, but what's new now, in fact, actually, I'm going to finish the thought on education first.
Sure.
So the way that we've seen teachers use this is that in Sibelius you click share and you get your score URL. That teacher can then send that URL around all their students to say, here's your homework, and they can enable the ability for them to download it. So all those students can then click download, get the file, and of course they could be on any device.
Yes.
So then they can open that on Android or Chromebook or tablet or what have you. And then the teacher might say, well, I've changed that file, I've updated it. So their workflow would be open Sibelius and make some changes to that file, click push, and that just pushes the changes to that URL. Then the students can download it again and get the next example or assignment or whatever it is. And these URLs can also be embedded in a web browser. And they don't have to be, a letter-sized portrait. They can be sort of small little letterbox-sized examples. And you can embed them just using a very simple iframe. All it is just iframe equals, the URL. And you can now allow full screen. So you can have many of these sort of dotted around a web page for interactive learning. So what we're showing today is a brand new viewer. It's been rewritten from the ground up. We've moved we're moving our whole cloud infrastructure away from the sort of more old cloud infrastructure that had Pro Tools collaboration and all sorts of things on it, to a separate instance that just has Sibelius services running on it. So it's going to increase reliability. It's much more modern. We can update it on the fly. We can do multiple releases a day if we want. So on the technical side, it's a big sort of revolution for us to be able to do that and be more in control of our own destiny. And the new viewers are much more responsive for the shape of a mobile phone. They're really tall, so this sort of fills the page really nicely. There's controls over the way the score looks, so it looks more like a Sibelius score now. Actually, the background is the same color as the desktop color on desktop, so it looks like a Sibelius score, and you can change the way the pages are laid out. So if you've got multiple pages in your score that you've shared, by default now it's like a document view, so it goes vertically. So on a phone you can just scroll and you can see all the pages. If you're on a more sort of landscape view, so either on a tablet or a desktop, you can tap a button and it goes into horizontal view. And because it's more like Sibelius, the pages are even joined and separated, so it looks like Sibelius running in a browser.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're really pleased with the way that's all coming together. And kudos to the team. It's amazing to see all these little bits formulate. So from a publishing point of view, it's much more efficient. So before we would process a score, so the Sibelius running in the cloud, and it would process that score and produce a bunch of assets to produce the viewer.
Right, like an image and a sound file and so on.
Exactly,
So,
and we would do 3 semitones up, 3 semitones down.
Right.
So we'd have 7 versions of everything.
Yeah.
And now, when a publisher publishes a score, the chances are that score is going to be previewed first. So when someone hasn't bought it, then the publisher can display page 1 only, and there's no way of getting to the rest of the pages. And then once they buy it, they can see the rest. So the publishing time is now a fraction of the time it used to take. So instead of waiting for 7 times everything, it's just 1 page and 1 MP3 and some metadata, and that's it. Only when someone then buys it do we then render other things. Only when someone transposes to a different key do we then render that. But so that's only the first time. It might take a second for the assets to come down, but then the next time somebody else around the world would like the same piece in that key, it's instant. It's already been done.
That's a lot more efficient.
It's a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
And and transposing is much more musical. We're 12 semitones up, 12 semitones down, but also enharmonically doing the M harmonic equivalent. So if you want a
G flat
augmented
or
unison,
F
you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we present the options only if they're possible as well.
Okay,
so
no transposing into D double sharp. Yeah.
Right, yes, because that's just silly. It's a brand new interface. Yeah. It's really slick, but also when you're embedding the examples into a web page, even if they're a tiny letterbox, it's really thin, it's along the bottom, it just gets out of the way, and it allows you to have a really slick looking browser as well.
What is the timing that we can expect on this or any of these updates?
This is it's actually running in production now, but we haven't released the API for publishers to go to it. We've got a number of publishers with huge number of scores. We've got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of scores that we need to migrate to the new system. We've got to make sure we do that really carefully, and we plan it, and we've got plans to reverse and all those sorts of things. So there's a bit more work to do. I'm hoping in the coming months that we'll see that. And then when you share music from Sibelius, that's once we've made the change, that's the viewer that you'll see. And I think we're going to have a new dashboard and all sorts of things coming as well.
That's great. So this may be a little inside baseball for some people, but Avid became a private company late last year, 2023.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just my perception, but the way I feel like the floodgates have opened up in the way we're talking about these things. And I'm just curious, does the fact that Avid is a private company now allow you to share more in the way of product previews and perhaps the future development path than you might have been able to do when Avid was a publicly traded company?
I would think so, yeah. So before there were revenue recognition rules,
right,
606 and all sorts of things that we needed to be very aware of and get approval of. And if we did announce something beforehand and then it slipped the quarter, we'd have to recognize the revenue differently or hold revenue back and all sorts of implications. A lot of those rules still exist. We still need to run our business in a very strict way.
Of course.
But yeah, I think over the last year or so anyway, we've had a shift in being much more open and collaborative with others. Part of my other role here is to look after the Pro Tools SDKs. So there's a scripting SDK that's totally open to anybody can get it and anybody can script it. You don't need to sort of sign up and to a private thing. We're not going to sell it to you and all these sorts of things that years ago we might have thought, well, how do we generate revenue from this thing? But actually it's more people using the product, more people creating tools to advertise the product. So it's, everybody sort of benefits from it.
Yeah.
So today at the show, we're previewing things across the Pro Tools side and the Sibelius side, and it does feel things are more open.
Yeah.
But this is sort of a continuation on more support for the software side. Certainly for Sibelius, we've over the last 5 years or so, we've doubled the team. We're up to about 17 or so, most of which are in Montreal, and we're able to cover off Android and desktop features, including UI, the new keypad that came in, and the cloud publishing, and yeah. So we've got these sort of, and keeping the lights on, and doing Sonoma support and working towards silicon and things. So. Yeah, we're a big enough team, but with the support from the business, and it feels really great to be in this position.
That's great, and it's always a challenge. I feel like, it's kind of like leading and following, and who's leading and who's following whom, and there's a certain degree of balance that needs to be achieved. And what I'm talking about are the balance between customer requests, customer needs, and what the latest trends are, and where you think as a company, as a team, the industry is going. And I'm thinking, to talking about Sibelius specifically, we've seen features across the board this past year. There are things like more system object positions, and more advancements in the areas of score subsets and staves, which will finally allow a lot of score preparers to finally check those items off their wish list. So those are certainly things I know you've been hearing from the customers. But on the other hand, you mentioned this earlier about the AI-generated chord symbols that we've seen, that I don't think anybody really in the field was asking for this specifically, but you identified some need, as well as the trend in AI, and how is that going to start making its way into the software and into our scores. So I'm just curious, can you share just a little bit about how you balance those two things, the customer requests and the latest trends in the industry? Yeah,
and it's tough. We've still got the bug list that goes back decades. Okay. So even in this coming release, we emailed the person who reported it back in, 1999 or something, to say, we fixed this.
And did that person reply?
I'm sure they did.
Okay, good.
Joe Pazak did that last week or the week
good.
before.
Great.
So
reminds me of something that's been lost in the mail for like 20 years, and then it's delivered to you. The post office said, "Apologies for the uncustomary delay."
Exactly. But it's things that aren't necessarily requested at all, and it came up years ago, and people have just been living with it, or putting up with it in a way that it's easy to kind of work around. So why do it? But it's in the MIDI copy and paste thing. We discovered that key signatures don't come across when you do MIDI import things. So we just did that, and we realized there was a bug logged, years ago.
Long time ago.
So it's that sort of So we've got a backlog, and we groom that all the time. Joe's the product owner for the Sibelius product line, so he defines the priority, and that can come in from industry trends, as you say. So there's been a big boom in AI. We've been able to get to train a model on thousands of public domain scores to produce a set of kind of harmony rules that sit inside an AI model. And then we've got a little neural net running inside Sibelius that then can call that locally. It's all local. And then that analyzes your music as you go. And we've got that running on iOS. So there's a little neural net running inside Sibelius on an iPhone, which I think is insane.
That's insane. That's great.
So it's really fun. So now we're looking at do we expand more harmony? Do we do other sorts of things in AI? And we're doing that across the board at Avid as well. So watch this space.
Okay, we will watch this space, and hopefully we'll be talking about all the things that have come in the forthcoming 12 months at this time next year at NAMM. And hopefully we will also be in touch well before then. But
yes, absolutely. And we're going to be doing more events. So we're going to be at TMEA this year as well. So that's really quite soon, actually, in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
So we'll probably have a an updated version of the copy paste with Pro Tools and Sibelius being shown there as well.
Oh, nice. Well, I'm sure everybody's going to look forward to seeing that and how that helps their workflows and all the other things that you've introduced. But Sam, it's great to see you and catch up on all these things. We are at NAMM, so we've got a little background music, little setting the mood here. Yeah. But it is, I think we are serenaded, but we can hear ourselves think a little bit more than in the past, which is great. But I really, truly wish you all the best for the future of the product and whatever may come. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Cheers.
Yep.